Good morning. It's Saturday, the 4th of October, so we're 2 days away from pension saving statements dropping for 24-25 or not, as the case may be. I just wanted to give a quick update after the video I did last week. So, had an amazing response to people expressing an interest in some of the modelling work that I'm doing at the moment. Had over 500 people sign up as of this morning, and so if you do want to be one of the first people to get a look at the various bits that I'll be offering, if you register at this URL, bit.ly GPFT interest, or scan that QR code, and you can do so. But just wanted to update on a couple of the other bits that I've been doing this week. So colleagues from the BMA and myself went to talk with colleagues at the IFS, or the Institute for Financial Studies, to their economic team who write all the various reports. And one of the things that featured quite a lot was some of the terrible issues in the taxation systems where there are tax cliffs, for example at the 100k tax cliff and also the 200k tax cliff, both of which affect higher earners in the NHS. And of course these are things that the government were aware about. So for example, if we look at this was in the DDRB evidence from the Department of Health, showing that just increasing income by £2, the tax charge can go from £44,000 to £46,000. So the DH and the government are obviously aware that this is a problem, and aware that it's a problem that affects medics. I did some fancy charts on this as well last September, because the 24-25 tax year, so that's the tax year that we're meant to be getting envelopes this week for, was going to be particularly brutal for many because of the pay awards. But one of the points that I wanted to make to the IFS is that it's not just a one-off because of the pay awards in that year. It's an ongoing problem, and it got me thinking a little bit about in the same way that the Department of Health gave this case study and I gave this case study, this is just a one person. So this was a year 13 consultant with 25 years in the 24-25 tax year who'd incremented that year, and then that produced this horrendous graph. But these are edge cases to show the effect, and what people need to understand is how does it affect them. So I'll just talk you through this graph very quickly. So if your earnings are above the additional rate thresholds, that's 125, 140, in terms of income tax and national insurance, that's progressive. So if you earn more money, so along the x-axis is threshold income, and generally you would increase this by increasing non-pensionable pay, so doing additional PAs, doing waiting lift initiatives, doing work outside the NHS, for example. That is going to go up subject to the marginal tax rate in whichever country you're working in, so 45% in the UK and 48% in Scotland if you're above that 125, 140. So that is progressive tax, and I think most people generally broadly agree with progressive taxation. But the problem we have if you're a doctor in the NHS pension scheme, is that we then have to contest the annual allowance, and so that can bring down your post-tax earnings. Once you add an annual allowance, that's that yellow chart. And unlike this nice progressive tax on the top, income tax, the annual allowance has a tax cliff caused by the idiotic pensions taper. So that could mean that somebody on an income of 199,999 is here, and then someone with an income £2 higher at 200,001 falls off this cliff, and that means there can be a really large area where to get back to the earnings that they were on after all applicable taxes at 199,999, they've got to be earning way over here. And so the key point of this is that this triangle here is an area where you are, quote, paying to work, end quote, because to get back to this income you've got to earn way over here. And in this example it was 242k or something ridiculous before they were earning what they were earning at 199.99. One of the other things we really emphasise to the IFS is just the huge difficulty in trying to compute this, given that many of us have got pension savings data that is years out of date. So I've not even got my 23-24 data yet, let alone my 24-25 data, and many haven't got an RPSS. They've not even got the 22-23 and the earlier data that they need to be able to work out where they are. So it got me thinking, after the modelling that I presented in the video last week, whether or not, rather than kind of presenting these edge cases, you could do something along the lines of this yellow graph to show people where they are. So I'm just going to give a quick recap of some of the stuff that I showed in the video last week, because it's moved on a little bit. So all you need for this, if you're an officer, is a TRS, and you can put in those 3 pay values. I've added in work time equivalent, and then you can also get the work time equivalent pensionable pay value from the 1995 section of the TRS, put it in here, as well as your membership. If you've got added years, you can pop that in there, as I showed last week. And if you're a practitioner, you can also add in your practitioner earnings data, and also your pension, which you can derive from a pension saving statement or an RPSS or from a TRS. For most people, that's going to be the 2024 value. And for practitioners, but unfortunately not for officers, because the amount of data that you need to put in, you can also put in the 2008 scheme. So just going to go back to the officer example for a minute to show this effect. Now, for people in England, as I explained last week, you can predict your 25-26 pensionable pay from the September pay slip, and you just need to put in these 2 values here. So pensionable pay year to date, and here you've got pensionable pay in the period. Put in your work time equivalent, and then it's going to estimate what your full year pensionable pay is going to be in 25-26. If you're not in England, or if you are going to increment or get more back pay in the remainder of the tax year, you can put in your own estimates for what your actual pensionable pay is going to be and what your work time equivalent pensionable pay is. And again, I covered that a little bit last week. So this will give you a basic estimate both of your pension. So these are the kind of the TRS values, and these are the values that you're not necessarily going to get. I certainly won't be getting them because of early retirement, and also because of scheme pays reductions for annual allowance. But these are the TRS values at the different pension ages. So state pension age and 1995 pension, so age 60 for me, for example. And then this is what normally comes in your brown envelope. So these are the PIAs. Added just a little bit explaining about data validation. So for example, you can check for this member that the pension value is the same as what's being predicted, and then you can see in those examples it is spot on. For those with added years, it might be out a little bit because of a slightly curious way that they're calculating added years on the TRSs that I've seen to date. And then if you want to know what the position is for pension taxation, you can add in your taxable pay. You can add in if you've made any gross private pension contributions towards a SIP, for example. You can add in carry forward for the 22-23. You can get this figure from your accountant who process your RPSS. So for example, I've done some work with Forvis Mazars, and they will give you this value as part of your standard report. And so that's a carry forward that you can take into the 22-23 tax year. These values will be computed, but to accurately work it out, you need much more data than you're providing to this little modeler, because you need all the RPSS data. So you can just hop onto the HMRC carry forward calculator, and to get the exact values of carry forward from the 23-24 and 24-25 tax year, it's this kind of unused allowance bit that's on that report that comes out of it. And marginal rate for most people is going to be 45%. If you're affected by tapering, you're an additional rate taxpayer. So 45% in all of those tax years. In Scotland, unfortunately, your rate is going to be higher than that, particularly in the 25-26 tax year, because the additional rate tax is 48%. And then that's going to give you this 3-year summary. So 23-24 is the year that we were meant to get brown envelopes for last October. That's not happened. I've asked for mine 5 times, still waiting. 24-25 is what's meant to land on doorsteps on Monday. I've got a funny feeling mine isn't going to land on my doorstep on Monday, and I've got a funny feeling yours isn't going to land either, but who knows? They may prove me wrong. But crucially, one of the reasons I've done this modeler is that during the tax year, you can do something about it. So this member's put in a value of an estimated threshold income of 218,300, and at 218,300, their tax charge would be 49,796. But the reason these sliders are here is so that people can see the effect on threshold income, adjusted income, and tax, crucially tax. So you can see, for example, that at just over the taper, tax charge is 45,000, and then at just under it's 30,000. So an enormous difference by tripping over that tax cliff. And I think in the video I kind of covered the text here that will also kind of give you an advisory. So if for example here you're at 225, it shows that, you know, if you decrease your taxable income by £25,000, which is a ridiculous amount of money, you can still be better off by £6,000, which is just completely nuts and a massive disincentive for people to do additional work. But then kind of coming full circle to these kind of IFS style graphs, I think these are really kind of easy for people to understand. And so what I've done is on this new page, we've got all those inputs and outputs that you saw before. So this is your pension, this is your pension taxation down here. I've added a little table that shows what your tax charge is with no tapering. So if threshold income were less than 200, in this case it's 30,452 for this member in this year. If they then just trigger into the minimum tapering position, that tax charge has gone from 30 to 45, and on that graph that's what this drop is here. Okay, so I've called that the taper cliff impact. So for this member that figure is £15,000, and then you can see a mock-up of that on this chart at the bottom. This is all provisional and draft at the moment. I still need to kind of play with it and test it, but you can see the depth of that tax cliff there is £15,000. And then we have an area for this member, because they've not gone fully tapered, they've still got £30,000 of allowance, so they've not come all the way down to 10,000. There's going to be an area of the graph where they have a really high effective marginal rate. So this gives a value here. Max tapering occurs at 232, and that's plotted on that chart as well. And then the idea is that this graph isn't fixed for this member because we're still in the 25-26 tax year. So you can choose where you are on that graph. So if you are going to be in this triangle here where you're paying to work, I would suggest that's probably not a very good idea. And ideally what you want to do is try and get it so that you're not in that area. Now, some people will find that it's very difficult for them to get below a tapered threshold without changing job plans, for example, if they're on 12 PAs or whatever. So, for example, if this member is on 500 and they can't get that down easily any other way, then this slider here will allow them to alter that graph by making a private pension contribution. So again, it just shows people during the tax year that they've got options, but I probably wouldn't play with any of this. Well, it's not available and out yet, but I wouldn't play with any of this probably until after the budget, so we can see if there's any impacts from the budget, and then they'll obviously be included in this modelling. So kind of coming full circle, if you're interested in getting your hands on some of these tools that will be coming out shortly, please register at bit.ly GPFT or use that bit.ly GPFT interest, or use this QR code here, and then hopefully you'll be able to get your hands on some of these tools. And with all the tools, you'll be able to send a PDF of all your outputs, and you can save scenario names, etc. So once you've done all this, you can come back to it at a future date and edit it if your position changes, or if you've got a better idea, for example, of what your taxable income is going to be closer to the end of the tax year. Many thanks for your attention.